Hello and welcome to Sustainable Circumstances. I'm your host, Jason Schwab. Today is November 13th, 2013, and we will be discussing the importance of living in a world without heat or air conditioning. I'm sitting here with Glenn Murcutt's grandson, John. Glenn is known for his logic in interpreting the climate conditions to build the most sustainable house. John has contributed in helping to continue his grandfather's career and better serve our world. So John, tell me a little about your grandfather. Who is he and what does he stand for?
Well, Jason, my grandfather is a very private man, extremely private. He just turned 70 and his whole life he has never built a house outside of the Australian area. He enjoys building a shelter that doesn't task any negativity on our climate. He analyzes the land, pointing out the features of the landscape, like the way the water moved many years ago. He is an expert on identifying what elements play into the environment and how we interact and change these variables in certain lifestyles we choose. Glenn gets sick to his stomach when we, as the human race, mess up what took so long to establish. Glenn's sole desire is not to change the patterns of our climate, but to go with the flow, being sure not to create or destroy anything. Glenn is a man who has no email or cell phone. He rarely even uses the house phone. He likes to have a hard copy in which he can write on and send back. We've been using the fax machine for so many years to make it possible for this type of communication. Glenn would rather meet with you and discuss with you in person rather than dealing with potential miscommunicated thoughts in this digital era.
Wow, that's amazing. A man who doesn't have a connection to the digital world. Yet he is still able to live in our society, contributing to a non-existent carbon footprint. You mentioned your grandfather analyzes the land, determines how the environment acts on our climate. What signs other than the wind and the water does he pay attention to?
Glenn doesn't just look at the wind and water. He understands how the complex paths and how they vary in their variables that cause their movements and their complexity. He looks at the angles of the sun and the shapes of the leaves on the trees, too.
So you're saying your grandfather is very detail-oriented, and all these minute details play into a bigger part.
That's correct. He needs to have a high attention to detail in order to create and build housing that is so efficient, so deft in their design, that they hardly feel like buildings at all. Even on a hot summer day with temperatures approaching 90 degrees, many of the houses we build are cool and comfortable. Glenn has only used air conditioning units on 2 projects. Our goal is to create housing that doesn't rely on this wasted energy source. Many of the houses we design don't have air conditioning units or even heating systems. Glenn always says it's a waste of energy, and if you build it properly, you don't need either system.
Man, I wish my house was built correctly. It would save me a lot in heating and air conditioning. That is amazing that your grandfather is a man responsible for these types of projects. What is Glenn's educational background?
Glenn got his degree from the Sydney Technical College, attending classes at night while he apprenticed with a local architect. Soon after graduating, he went off on his own. He designed a house for his brother and a small country house for a young couple, and taught at the University of New South Wales Architectural School.
How practical are these solutions to housing?
Well, some of the solutions are difficult to design, but their benefits don't spread far. He has never designed an inner-city apartment house, for example, and it's unlikely that he never will. But what he does build, he builds exceedingly well. At 70, which is after the mid-career for an architect, he carries on exactly as he always did. In stubborn seclusion and keen concentration, he still stands on the empty site and watches the trees, judges the wind, and measures the rainfall as he still approaches his work with a mixture of open-mindedness and obstinacy.
What an interesting man. Glenn Murcutt, the mastermind in sustainable construction. Glenn seems to be a big role model in your life.
Yes, I have grown up surrounded by this way of living, and I wouldn't want to live any other way. One of my favorite quotes my grandfather lives by is, "Any work of architecture that has been designed, any work of architecture that has the potential to exist, or that exists, was discovered. It was not created. Our role is to be the discoverer, not the creator."
Well, how about that? That pretty much sums it up. Thanks for telling us the story of your grandfather, Glenn Murcutt. John, it has been a pleasure to meet you. I'm your host, Jason Schwab, on Sustainable Circumstances. Be sure to tune in next week when we discover how Bob Ross designs his own organic paint. We will see his secret recipe. See you next Wednesday on Sustainable Circumstances, which airs 6 to 9 p.m. only here on BWTV.